What is the impact to the Florida housing market now that we are seeing prices starting to correct, especially when it relates to beachfront properties or properties that are close to the beach here in the state of Florida? Well, first off, let me introduce myself. My name is Troy Funk, and the last name is spelled Funk, F-U-N, Fun, K. And I have been a resident of Florida, and I've been in sales going on 4 decades now, 40 years. And I've seen a lot of change to the Florida real estate market in that time. And today I want to provide you with some value. And if I do provide you with some value, please hit that like button. And if you're not already a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button and the little bell so we can stay in touch. So first off, to start this journey, where am I at right now, right? This is absolutely beautiful, especially when we're talking about beachfront living or living close to the beach in the state of Florida. Well, I am on the island of Lido. I'm on Lido Key, and I'm going to walk down Lido Key. I'm pretty much at the north section of Lido. I'm going to walk south as I kind of share some insight and give you a lot of B-roll to look at to just kind of prove my point of where this market is going in Florida for a beachfront lifestyle, and what's the impact on prices as we're seeing adjustments in the Florida real estate market. Now, I did a video a few weeks ago, and the video was Florida real estate prices falling. Now, in just a few weeks, that video has now over 173,000 views on it. And what was most exciting to me was all the comments that I got on that video. Now, the video has about a 95% like factor, which is good because it's certainly a controversial subject right now as we're kind of debating where is this market going as we're seeing adjustments and we're seeing reasons why real estate should adjust here in Florida. And the comments were very interesting because they were all over the board. They're all over the country. People are commenting their situation and where they see the values coming in Florida and reasons why it will actually continue to go up, as crazy as that may sound, and reasons why we may absolutely see a free fall of prices. But I think a lot of people will agree we really haven't quite seen that yet. And are we going to? And what does that mean? Well, it's kind of interesting. And just being real honest with you here, a lot of people want to see the market fall. They want to see values come down. And why is that? Well, a lot of people got hurt in just the last couple years. We have never seen such an escalation of property values, not in my career in 40 years, other than the time that the last time we saw this kind of increase in market values, we knew what happened next. So that's natural to think property values went up so fast, so crazy, that now we're going to start seeing the free fall of real estate here in Florida. Well, is that actually going to happen? Well, let me just kind of bring some facts to life on that situation. Now, again, getting back to that video, a lot of great comments, and I welcome your comments. Certainly, I want to hear what you think about the market, where you're at, because many of these comments reflected where they're at in Florida, and a lot of these comments talked about property values are not going down depending on where they're at. And I will agree that real estate is all about the location. It's all about where your property's at in Florida, because it's not going to be across the board. We're not going to see 50% decline in values consistently for every property here in Florida. And a lot of it depends on where that property's at, which again, it's kind of why I want to take you to the beach, because when people come to Florida, so many people want to live on the beach. They want to live a lifestyle of peace and calmness and oceanfront and all the things that the water brings when you live near the island. So values coming down. Well, again, it's about location in Florida. Now, I followed that up with another video that talked about the luxury market in Florida and how that's very different than the general real estate market, because in the high-end luxury market, you have a completely different audience of buyer. You have a buyer that pays cash. that is not affected by interest rates, but is more affected by the stock market. And obviously the stock market hasn't been doing that well either. But in luxury housing, there's a different impact to the general market. So when people want to move to Florida, they typically want to live near the beach. And I'm getting a lot of calls that say, Troy, I'm interested in buying a house on the beach or near the beach when the property values go down 50%. And I'm gonna wait to buy because that's gonna happen, and I'll be in a great situation to buy values 50% of where they are right now. Well, is that really gonna happen? Again, when you look at the real estate market, it's a location situation. We're seeing our population of the world increase, and people are moving where they want to move. Now, I've been dead wrong sometimes on predictions of where I think the market's going to be. And I'll tell you, one time I was absolutely dead wrong in where I saw values starting to decline, and that was at the start of the pandemic. Now, that was a real scary time because I've never lived through a pandemic prior to that to kind of see how that would impact our real estate market. And at the beginning of the pandemic, businesses were shutting down, and people were going back. They were this new thing, work from home, and it really started to scare us. What is this going to happen? What's going to happen to the market when people don't have jobs? Businesses are closed down. I mean, that looked pretty drastic at that point. It made sense to me that we were going to see a huge decline in property values. And what happened? Just the opposite. Property values soared higher than they ever have soared. Now, thank you, I did get a government stimulus check to help my business during that time. And that was good because I'm a business owner. And it kind of got through that time. But even with that, the market looked like it was going to change. Now, I know a lot of smart investors out there, and I deal with a lot of investors that own a lot of property, and I saw one investor starting to liquidate his properties prior to the pandemic, just so he had cash in hand to come back in the marketplace and buy properties substantially at a discount. And he did that pre-pandemic. Well, the timing was obviously wrong on that one, and that's one that I would have predicted as well, but it didn't happen that way. After the pandemic, property values absolutely soared. Interest rates went down to historic low rates, and we started having these, I would say, I'd call them bad things happen. And one of those was all these darn iBuyers that came in the marketplace. iBuyers just buying every property they could directly from the owner, offering them cash, and then putting the property back on the market at a higher value. Where buyers, if they were securing financing, had to buy the property for more than what the house would even appraise for. And they had to do that in the form of cash. Well, that protected the bank. If a bank is loaning money, they're still loaning money based on the appraisal of the home, not what the home's selling for. So if a buyer's willing to pay more than the appraisal of the house, that became an issue of the buyer. The buyer had to do that. And we had so many buyers, our inventory could not sustain that situation, and property values just soared, especially when the appraisal wasn't an issue of buying. It was just a matter of limited supply and huge demand. So here we are after the pandemic. Well, of course, COVID is still happening here, as my family actually got sick over the holidays with COVID. And so it just, realization that COVID's still around. But the market's back to a unique place. Now, interest rates obviously went way up, and we've started to see correction with builders because they were building inventory, and they were building it faster than the demand called for, especially when the demand said, I can't afford to buy this real estate anymore. And that's the saddest thing that I think I've seen in the last couple of years, is the fact that we have really lost affordability in Florida. When you look at buying a property, buyers normally don't come to me. If they're financing property and they're looking to secure a home, they don't normally start out saying, we want to spend this amount of money. You know, what's the price of the home? That's normally not the question. The question is, if you're a finance buyer, the two questions are, how much is the down payment and how much is the monthly payment? Because that's how they equate in their ability to buy the property. How much money does it require to buy the property, to get in, and how much is it going to cost monthly? Well, when interest rates doubled, that affordability factor changed drastically, and we have lost a huge pool of buyers from that regard. So obviously we're seeing market corrections right now, because buyers that are dependent on how much down and how much monthly started saying, wait, you've really limited my ability, and you did it in such a very short period of time, and to the point where some buyers just can't afford it. So what's happening right now to help correct this situation? Well, some builders are in a desperate situation. They have a lot of inventory and the selection of homes to buy is good. So the result of that is a lot of builders are offering what I would refer to as flex cash. So when you buy the property, they're willing to give you a certain amount of money. So let's just say on a $500,000 home, they're willing to give you a concession of $30,000 flex cash. Now, what is this flex cash? Well, it's a term of saying, Mr. Builder, or I should say the builder is not reducing the price of their house. What they're doing is they're trying to bridge the gap between a buyer buying their property. And with $30,000, there's multiple ways you can spend that money. Number one, if you're financed, we can use that money and we can buy the interest rate down. So even though the interest rate is at a certain amount, we could prepay the lender and get it so the interest rate is much lower, which allows you to qualify to buy the property where you wouldn't if we didn't buy the interest rate down. So builders are offering flex cash. What if you don't want to buy the interest rate down? Well, you can use this flex cash to add for additions to the house, pay your closing costs, but it's a concession. And basically, with a builder offering flex cash, they are in essence offering a concession. They're lowering the price of their property, and they're really just trying to bridge the gap between why the buyer can't qualify and what can we do to make the buyer qualify. Now, is this flex cash only possible with new construction? No. Any seller can offer you flex cash, or it's all about the numbers, right? It's just a play on numbers, because flex cash is a concession. So if it's a $500,000 property, in essence, it's a $30,000 concession to reduce the price. But we're doing it in a way that you can spend that money to qualify for the property. So anyway, that's one option if you're a finance buyer that's helping things on. So again, where am I at? I'm here on Lido, beautiful place. And I'm here in the morning, and I'll tell you, it's a little cold to a Floridian right now. I've got my winter clothes on, and it was cold Christmas. And as much as I want to whine and complain about how cold it is in Florida at the end of the year, I have nothing to complain about. And especially if you live up north. And ideally, that's why people are coming to Florida, because regardless of the economy, we still have a lot of upward pressure from people that want to move to Florida. And most of those are people looking to retire. They have cash. Financing is not an issue. So when we talk about real estate crashing here in Florida, and we look at possibly buying on the beach, does it look like it's going to crash? At the end of the day, price is always affected by supply and demand. And we do have a tremendous amount of demand for Florida, that it continues in Florida. And with that, that's going to keep our market strong, especially when we have these cold days. So as I talk about Lido Key right now, I want to just talk about the market opportunity on the island, or at least this island, and what does that mean now moving forward. Now, Lido Key is real interesting to me because I have a lot of history here in Florida, and I've sold many mega million-dollar mansions here in Florida, and I sold one a few years ago here on Lido Key. And what's interesting, this is a house that was on the market 4 years, and I was the last real estate agent to have the home listed, and we had it under contract in a few months after having multiple offers. Now, the seller had the house built, and I've dealt with a lot of owners on mega million-dollar mansions that had the property built, and one thing that's always consistent with those sellers is they're good with their money. And every seller that's had their home built that I've represented on a multi-million-dollar property has shown me a book with every possible receipt, with every receipt that they paid to have that house built. And they know to the penny what it cost to build their mega million-dollar home. And that's one consistency that I see with sellers, and the other consistency that I've seen with mega million-dollar sellers is they're not going to take less. They're not taking less than what they paid for the property, even if it means keeping that property on the market for years, which was the case with this property I sold here on Lido Key. Now, after we sold this property on Lido Key, the buyer actually turned it into an Airbnb. Now, that was quite shocking for me because prior to that, we didn't really see that wave of vacation rentals, but they bought a multi-million-dollar property to turn it into a vacation rental property. And that became the norm here on Lido Key. Now, Lido Key is not deed restricted, and there are restrictions with the county on how you can buy property and turn it into vacation rentals. But the owners that lived here on Lido Key didn't like this new change. The people that were here full time all of a sudden lived next to a house that was a vacation rental. And there became quite a protest of owners that lived on Lido Key that said, we don't want to allow this. We don't want to live next to a hotel, so to speak. And there's been some protest on that happening with Lido Key. But it also changed the market because it changed the supply and demand, where properties on Lido Key started selling very quickly, and the inventory went down, prices went way up. So where is Lido Key today? Well, it's a very desirable area, and Lido Key, just to give some perspective, is sort of one of the jewels of Sarasota. Of course, a lot of people think of Siesta Key when they think of Sarasota as one of the world's most beautiful beaches from the standpoint of the sand. The sand on Siesta Key is very special. It's a quartz sand, it's white, it never gets hot. So in the summer, the sand is cold and the water is warm. It's a magical place. And Lido Key sand is different. It's just the island north of Siesta, but it's not the same as Siesta. So the beach doesn't get as much attention. And I say that in a very good way. As a local, my choice is typically Lido Key because I don't have the same crowds coming here as you would on Siesta Key. And Lido Key just has, I'd just say it has a lot more wealth to it overall. It's not as commercialized, not that Siesta Key is commercialized, but it has a completely different vibe from Siesta Key. But the draw to live near Lido Key has been very much in demand. So people that come down to Florida, they want this lifestyle. They want to live near the beach, but they don't want to pay too much, especially when they see where the property values were 2 years ago. And in that short period of time, in some cases, they've just doubled. And it makes no sense. And we see all the corrections happening in the market. A lot of people want to see this market go down in value just so they can come back into this marketplace and buy. So what's for sale on Lido Key right now? What is the price point? Well, there's a new development that's going under construction right here. As I've walked here, if you kind of look in the background, and that was an old hotel they tore down. And this is going to be the ultimate in luxury lifestyle here in Sarasota. And this development is going to have condominiums there's actually 65 units being built right there. The price point is from 5.9 million to 15.3 million, roughly 3,900 square feet to 4,500 square feet. And I'll show you the information on that. This is really the new normal for Lido Key. As properties get sold, they go up in value. They are elevated very high. And you may say, well, where's the affordability in that? Well, it's not catering to the affordable market. But if you do want to live on Lido Key and you say, look, 15.3 million is out of my price point, what else is possible? Well, I actually just put a property on the market on Lido Key, and it's at the entry level price point. This is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condominium across the street from this. It's not on the beach, but from that location you can walk to the public beach and be on the same sand, and that unit is listed for the high 6s. So that's the entry point to get on Lido Key right now. High 6s, high-end condo, you're looking at 15.3 million. Well, what if you want a house on Lido Key? Well, same thing. If the high-end homes, if they're on the market on Lido Key, could be upwards to 25 million. Entry level on the water, you're looking at a couple million. And that's, again, supply and demand. A lot of people are waiting for these prices to crash to come in and say, I'm going to buy them for half off. Well, honestly, the demand is just too high right now, and I think it always will be. So if you want to come to Florida and you're looking for a beachfront property, there are options, but it's just a matter of value. The further you get away from the sand, the lower price. Property values crashing. Ideally, it's location driven. So if you're in a high demand area, the high end is not seeing correction, and probably won't, because there's too much of an audience that can afford that, still wants that product, and we're not seeing those property values fall. So ideally, the market is subjective to one thing, and that one thing is location. If you want to live in the best location in Florida and you're waiting for property values to fall, you probably will be waiting the rest of your life because it's probably not going to happen. So in closing, if you're thinking of buying property in Florida, there is some good news. Yes, property values are correcting. It's not across the board. It depends on where you're at. There are some good values out there. We have a lot of motivated sellers. We have a inventory of foreclosures that will start hitting the market. And why are we seeing foreclosures? Because we haven't seen foreclosures in a few years with this pandemic. The pandemic is over, and in Florida, banks can foreclose, and they are starting to foreclose. Those homes will be hitting the market, and I have a nice inventory of properties right now that are in pre-foreclosure status. Currently have about 17 listings. So when I keep hearing the market is falling, again, it depends on where you're at in Florida. If I've been helpful to you, please hit that like button. If you're looking for property in Florida, check out my website, especially if you're looking for a good value in a pre-foreclosure or a builder home, because right now builders are in trouble. A lot of them have inventory and they will negotiate, typically with this flex cash. A lot of times they won't reduce their price, but they'll incentivize the home in our area to help that buyer get into the property. So again, if I can be of help, reach out to me. I look forward to seeing you on my next video.